Hello and welcome back. Happy Wednesday. Today we are going to be going over Tinto Talks number 75 for the upcoming game with codename Project Caesar, which features the Black Death, which we have, in the time we have played, become very familiar with and played through a whole bunch of times, and it is always kind of a little bit of a kick to the nuts. And so this is going to be a little bit of a fun time going through. We're going to talk about this, our experience, and we've been listening to the soundtrack. You know, when we go through these, let's bump up the tunes a little bit. And there's actually a track specifically for the Black Death, so we're going to blast that while we go through this Tinto talk. Hopefully it doesn't get too loud. Hey, everything's chillin'. It sounds like a 14th century time. Just vibes and good times. Hello and welcome to another Tinto Talks, the happy Wednesday where we talk about redacted. Everyone knows this is an anagram for something else. If you think you know the anagram, comment below. Today we will take a look at the Black Death situation. It will be slightly different from others as I presented in a more detail than other situation-related Tinto Talks or talks, almost being an AAR. So let's start without further ado. Is this an error by Pavia? Probably not. This is referring to the Tinto talks. He just doesn't specify that it's Tinto, which is why he capitalizes it. Refuses to capitalize Happy Wednesday, though. It's Anno Domini 1346, and some news has arrived in Poland. Black Death in Darjeeling. Wow, the music's ramping. Alas, our ship enters port, but thousands of sailors are hardly 10 are spared. We reach our homes, our kindred and our neighbors come from all parts to visit us. Woe to us, for we cast them the darts of death. Whilst we spoke to them, whilst they embraced us and kissed us, we scattered the poison from our lips. Going back to their homes, they turn into infected. Sorry, they in turn soon infected their whole families. We were just thinking zombies. They turn. Who in the 3 days succumbed and were buried in one common grave. Priests and doctors visiting the sick returned from their duties ill, and soon were numbered with the dead. O death, cruel, bitter, impious death, which thus breaks off the bonds of affections and divides father and mother, brother and sister, son and wife, lamenting misery. We feared to fly, yet we dared not remain. And so it begins. So we get the start of the Black Death. You may notice a new feature here in the Situation Alert Tooltip. It is a hint, a system that we have now in EU5 to help guide the player with different mechanics and features. If we click on it, we'll get the following information on the right side of the screen. This is a really nice kind of addition here. I think that there's a ton of interconnected things. There's a ton of systems, and so this is going to be, in the abstract, a hard game to learn, but features like this are going to be able to make it a lot easier. So we have a few actions that we can take to combat the Black Death. Hospital is very bougie. You have to be super rich in terms of your start to be able to build hospitals. Not a lot of starts can go and blast a hospital. Notice the music is impending and dooming. Except it's almost over, so we'll restart it when it does. But we see here also... Here, we'll just put it on repeat. The hospital, very expensive. It is in urban locations. It is the best thing that you can build, though. I think it gives minus 30 or 30 disease resistance, something like this, which is very, very effective. You can click on the situation banner to have a look at the special interactions you have at your disposal. I think there's 4 categories of things you can use, and so perhaps they can help mitigate the catastrophe a little bit. For the most part, with a lot of the starts, there's not a whole lot you can do against the Black Death. You're going to lose 40% of your pops. With some of them, you can avoid it entirely, which we saw someone do that as Iceland or Greenland, I forget. They completely closed off their market, they didn't trade with anyone, and they just hunkered down and avoided the Black Death. But you're saving 500 pops there, so... There's not a lot of pops there to begin with. But you can also keep stability high. Not only does it help with rebellions, but it's also essential to pop promotion speed. This is the big one. So high stab and pop promotion speed is going to be something... Your pops really, really get killed, a lot of them. If you lose 40% of your pops, you lose 40% of your qualifications. And so pop promotion speed coming out from the Black Death is specifically very, very important. Do not build new buildings in depopulating locations since they will struggle to hire new workers. Yep. Keep an eye out on pop promotion speed, as most of our buildings and RGOs will need peasants to promote to the upper social classes. So again, this is kind of stuff that we have been mentioning quite often every time we go over the Black Death, but we see that now will be in the tip tooltip for new players. The characters that appear at the top of the hint are actual in-game members of a cabinet, not pre-scripted. This guy has some concerns about the Black Death, apparently, ostensibly, theoretically. It's gotta be a Polish guy, because we really can't pronounce anything Polish. As you see, hints try to give an explanation of what's going on, and also some powerful, useful recommendations to follow. Actions that are up to the players to follow or not, of course, as they have other priorities. So, this new Black Death has appeared in certain places called a Dartling. If you click on the situation alert, and therefore you open the situation panel, you will get to know where the place is and how the Black Death progresses. There's actually two, alerts. There's the alert for the situation, and then there's the alert for the disease, and they each open up a different, kind of section of the UI that's going to be useful. One of them is useful for tracking the spread of the Black Death, which is this one, and the other one is useful for kind of keeping an eye on disease resistance, although what resistance? Everyone's gonna die. And so this is going to be some months, maybe a year later. The plague has started, it's getting closer, impending doom, it is coming for Poland. Oh no! Not Poland. As it does, after some time, Black Death may end up reaching your country. It spreads, and then it reaches your country. Unless you're an island, you're going to have a hard time avoiding it. Although, I do believe it is significantly less prevalent in tropical areas. I'm not 100% sure. This also just might have been a bug with regards to some of our playthroughs and this type of thing, but with Mali, we got a very, very slight Black Death, just kind of sweeping the northern portion, and it didn't really penetrate the tropics that substantively. I think we lost 15 to 20% of our pops instead of the standard 40 to 60 or something like this. Maybe it was 20 or 30? Something like this. The Black Death has arrived in Poland, and we're busy fighting the Teutonic Order in a war. Oh no! This army's gonna have the Black Death, and it's gonna spread it all across our territory as we march around. Yay! With the Black Death arrives, a variety of options will be available to the players. Let's take a look at it in depth, a look at all of them. So we can move the court into hiding. I think this gives negative satisfaction, or something like this, and it makes it harder for your characters to die. This is kind of an annoying one. If you get a bunch of really good cabinet members dying, it's it's unfortunate. We have food and trade actions. We can control the food market and isolate the country. If you isolate the country and nobody trades with your market, you actually won't get the Black Death to spread to your country. If I recall correctly, if you have no land borders with anyone else. It's something like this. I haven't tested it out too much. I do know that one of the players who had early access did this as Greenland or Iceland or something, and they completely isolated the country. And then we have disease control actions. Procure remedies, I think, was just bugged, or it was just ungodly expensive, and it didn't really do anything when we played with it. Segregate the affected is what you do when you're poor, and if you can afford to build a lot of buildings, or you have a very low amount of provinces, expel the sick is going to be giving you the most disease resistance opportunities, because you build a building, it unlocks a building that gives you a lot of disease resistance, whereas segregated infected doesn't require you to build a building, and it gives you some amount of disease resistance or something like this. I think. Okay. So we also have sponsor mass forgiveness and present scapegoats. From what I remember, we just did present scapegoats most of the time because it seemed better. But we can now see some of what we get from some of these. So we see move court into hiding. It does give negative satisfaction. And then this is going to make it, I think, this will reduce the risk that anyone from court will die from the plague. Yeah. In exchange, you get negative satisfaction, which is going to, in turn, generally speaking, if you have your taxes set at equilibrium levels, where it's set to target 50 satisfaction, this effectively will decrease your taxes. Generally speaking, it feels like the Black Plague really squeezes your money a lot because it really negatively affects satisfaction, driving it down. And this kind of decreases the amount that you can tax. Stability, negative stability, really negatively affects satisfaction. Here we see isolating cities, which is going to give monthly control plus 0.05, production efficiency minus 10%, market attraction minus 25%, a massive minus 80% bubonic plague impact. Now, if I recall correctly, this scales with control or something like this. But this is a very, very powerful, but it requires you to have a lot of urban areas, because this is only applying to urban areas. It is very strong on urban areas, though, and this combined with the hospital is going to make your urban areas basically immune. So if you have really, really high pop areas in a few key urban places, this is going to be really powerful for preserving your population. Unfortunately, not a lot of countries start out really urbanized. I'm struggling to remember. Korea's like kind of urbanized. I think the most urbanized, some of the Italian countries are going to be relatively urbanized. I think Italy in general is the most urbanized country. I think the Mamluks start out with a couple like really big population centers that are in cities. I assume that China does too, but we haven't taken that close a look at China. Well, I think China, if I recall correctly, they have urbanization, but in terms of proportion of their population, the amount that they have in cities is not that high, because they just have so many pops. Of course, they have huge cities, but that is going to allow you to save your cities. I recall, yeah, okay, so here's the kicker, though. It costs 40 stability, so that's a ton of stability to pay for this. But if it's going to protect, if you have a high enough proportion of pops in cities, this is going to be quite nice. Next, we have control the food market, which I don't remember control the food market all that well. I just remembered that it didn't feel super good. Here we have a 10 stab hit in order to implement it, and then we will get ban exports of these things, which I can't remember if this goes away after the Black Death. If it doesn't go away after the Black Death, this actually might be kind of okay-ish, because it's kind of nice to have these things banned for export. Except for tea. Tea you would want to export for money. But a lot of the foodstuffs, your burgers end up exporting, and they have really low base price, so it really doesn't generate much revenue. And then we have control of the food market, which is going to give minus this stability, or sorry, minus this equilibrium. So what's the point? What's the idea here? Does this make it so that the plague doesn't spread as easily? It must. Or it might just be a thing where it's just a superstition and it's just bad, which is, you know, a bit of a simulation, but poor for gameplay if there's strictly bad decisions. Here we see isolate the country, which costs 10 stab. Everything here costs stab, which is, or sorry, the top three I think cost stab, and then the bottom one refunds stab, something like this. In terms of the options, when you take it out on the minorities, that refunds stability. The truth hurts. So we get, here, let's turn the music down a little bit. We get a burger satisfaction equilibrium minus 10%, peasant minus 5%. These are the two guys that are going to be better for being taxed most of the time. So this is going to be not ideal. And then we get foreigners banned from imports and exports. Something that we had considered is Japan. In theory, you could completely isolate, but your daimyos might engage in trade, and the fact that they engage in trade is going to make it so you can't avoid it by hunkering down on the island. We also get progress towards traditionalist and traditional economy, and if you want to push these things, this is actually a huge opportunity in terms of timing window. 0.5 is absolutely massive, and if you have your cabinet, one of your cabinet members also encourage it, you can get up to like 0.7, and then if you have like values and estate privileges and this type of stuff, you could get plus like 1.25 or something, crazy big. And so this can allow you to, during the time of the Black Plague, completely change your value system in the direction of either traditionalist or traditional economies. My perspective is generally these aren't really good. There's a couple that are good in terms of what you can trend towards. I think that the Black Death gives you, but these ones specifically, traditionalist, traditional economy, not the best. I think traditional economy is actually okay, especially if you have really good resources, because capital economy is kind of better later. But traditionalist, the other side of that is innovative, although one nice thing about Traditionalist is decrease stability cost modifier. So if you go super Traditionalist early, it's going to be easier for you to recover your stability. And maybe this is good, and I just like didn't try out or play around with it enough to really realize it. Here we have Procure Remedies, which was ungodly expensive. For Poland, is this a flat or monthly cost? I'm not sure, but it does give paying to procure remedies scaled by 2.75. If this is monthly, that's a big nut. But it is going to give a stability and legitimacy here. The sickness can be fought and pushed back. Many doctors and priests claim that many recipes and remedies may improve the health of the sick. It is our duty to procure an ample supply of them. I wonder if the cost of medicaments in your market makes a difference for this. Okay, we get procure remedies. Oh, this is better than what it was when we played. So burger satisfaction equilibrium, peasant satisfaction equilibrium, progress towards traditionalist. So the progress towards traditionalists we're not necessarily thrilled with, but this is also pretty early on, and you maybe just don't push innovative until after the Black Death, and so it's a kind of a non-factor. And getting 5% on the satisfaction equilibrium is pretty nice, especially combined with the fact that you get that 7 stab juice, just like the opener of getting it in there. So that's going to be, if you're negative stability, that's going to be a big deal for estate satisfaction. Here we can do segregate the infected, and this is disease resistance 15%. So the way that it works is like you have your resistance and you have the presence of the disease in a location, and the presence of the disease in a location will increase steadily, as will your resistance. And so your resistance provides a ceiling for which the presence in a location cannot exceed. So if you have 80% resistance, you can only get 20% presence in a location. And so what will happen is having a lot of disease resistance. If you have 15% disease resistance, that guaranteed saves 15% of your pops from being infected with the plague. And if the plague kills 50% of pops, right, that effectively saves 7.5% of your pops because math. And so, but the way that it works is also it creates the ceiling past which it can't push. And so what will happen is that ceiling will slowly drop as there is a presence in the location. And I don't know exactly how the math works, or can't really explain the math, but if we have like 50% disease resistance and then it appears in a location, then what's going to happen is it'll trend up towards, let's say, 5%, but our disease resistance will also increase. And so our disease resistance will bring down the ceiling lower and lower and lower until there can't be any more presence, and then it will slowly push out the Black Plague entirely until you have 100% disease resistance, at which point the Black Plague is eliminated from the location. It can come back, though, if you were to segregate the infected and get rid of some of your disease resistance. So you can get reinfected, and so you have to keep an eye out for that. But this is going to be the cheapo mode, where if you can't afford it, which is most starts, you do segregate the infected and you save, 7.5% of your population. So instead of 60% of your pops dying, 52.5% die. Here we see Expel the Sick, which is going to allow you to build the Pest House, which, if I recall correctly, gives you more disease resistance than this. It will also give you progress towards communalism. Can't remember what communalism exactly does. I think the other side of it is individualism, and I actually think communalism is kind of okay. I think individualism, if I recall correctly, it gives you migration speed, and then communalism gives you a small amount of estate satisfaction equilibrium, and these are kind of the big 2 points. Okay. Let's continue on, and we have sponsor mass forgiveness. We found the one where you go after the minorities a little bit better, but we get this for forever. We get 12 stab. I do think you get a stab juice when you present scapegoats as well. Here we can see 7 scabs where you find the culprits, and this gives you clergy estate satisfaction equilibrium 5%. A little bit of clergy power, peasant satisfaction equilibrium. This actually seems pretty good. Disease resistance. This might be why we didn't like it. The minus 10% disease resistance. So I don't know. I guess if you're just raw dogging it, you're not going to get any disease resistance. I don't think this can reduce your disease resistance below 0. Maybe it can go negative, but this is very much not ideal because this is going to be more dead pops. Whereas scapegoats, let's take a look and read. We're going to get clergy, estate, satisfaction, equilibrium, plus, but minus on the peasants. So this is going to make everyone upset. Going to really negatively affect satisfaction here. Tolerance of the true faith, baby, though, is going to positively affect satisfaction. I think that's not enough to overcome the peasant estate satisfaction equilibrium. It's like somewhere between 5 and 10 or something like this in terms of how much satisfaction tolerance of the true faith gives. I don't think it's 10 though, and peasant estate satisfaction equilibrium will give 10, a malus of 10 to satisfaction. Converts pops. I don't remember it converting pops. That's interesting. But the tolerance of heretical and heathens, if you have a lot of those, they're going to be very upset at the prospect of this here. So it might be that if you have a kind of mono-religion culture, present scapegoats is better. I don't think we played with anyone who was... Actually, Mali was really mixed. But it might be the case that if you have mixed religions or this type of stuff, that maybe mass forgiveness or nothing is going to be better. But continuing on, given my current situation in war with the Teutonic Order in the middle of a unique Polish disaster called the Rise of Szlachta, that's going to be the only Polish word we try and pronounce, and we, of course, are not successful. I don't really need to get reduced, or I don't really want to get reduced satisfaction with the estates, so the only action I'm going to take for this moment is procure remedies to actually increase their support, paying 2.75 gold. If we take a look here in terms of what his actual budget is, that's actually not too bad on the budget, so that seems reasonable to procure remedies here. And it's going to give a 7 stab up here, and a little bit of legitimacy, and the stab is going to help him with the satisfaction, especially if he's a negative. While the situation is active, random events may pop up. They're generally negative. Lately, a group of burghers has been buying all the food stock for essential goods like medicine, spices, and preserved foods. There's no explicit law which forbids this behavior, but allowing them to extort and starve the commoners could lead to the plague spreading even further. And we can see we can engage in a temporary tax on hoarded goods. Burghers get upset, but we get a little bit gold. Interesting. Repossessing the horde is kind of maybe the curious one. Maybe that one's kind of the best option. We have a conflict of fads where these guys are going to be in conflict with each other, and this is going to be the thing. A lot of these options are either bad or worse, and a lot of them hit you in the stab, which is not ideal. And here we see estate satisfaction equilibrium minus 5%. How long does this last? 5 years. Unit food consumption minus 10%. Yikes. That is a little bit rough. And then here's the other option we could take. We can increase the spread of the bubonic plague while increasing the satisfaction of the peasants. Yeah, so now we have a little bit of a... Do we decrease satisfaction, or do we spread the plague? You probably spread the plague unless you have some... I still think it means, in terms of the way the math works, because the ceiling is decreasing, at the same time the presence of the plague is increasing, accelerating the rate at which the plague spreads is still going to result in more people dying. So I don't know which one's better here. Like, intuitively I just want to kill less of my pops, but okay. Some more months into the game and the Black Death keeps spreading. That's what it does. Goes to every location, everyone dies. The ongoing war is still more important. Is it, though? Is it? Another one bites the dust. Our dear ruler, I think, is dead. A rich man trust not in wealth. Gold cannot buy you health. Physics himself may fade. All things in the end are made. The plague of full swings goes by. I am sick. I must die. Oof. The truth hurts. But he's right. No hint could save him. To get a hint, guy. And so, okay. We see plague as punishment, another event. The end times are upon us, or at least so claim the ever-growing group of flagellants. that wander through our countryside, processioning and preaching of apocalyptic events to come as punishment for our pride, which only through Christ's ire as flagellation we can dispel. You know what's an interesting thing here? Considering how many different religions and how much different stuff they have going on, of course there's going to be different flavor text for like a bunch of these different types of events that could pop. While originally having the support of the church, these groups have strayed too far from doctrine to be sanctioned anymore. The clergy believes that they must be stamped out to prevent them from undermining stability. Yikes. When the church is like, you're too extreme, and we're talking about the 14th century church, you got some dudes with some vibes. On our side of the story, we've been able to piece out the Teutons, so now we can focus our efforts on managing the Black Death, which is kind of just like a sitting and watching everyone die for the most part. There's a few actions, but you click the actions you want to do, and then you're just like, man, everyone's dying. Focusing on the war has taken its toll, though. So we see 354,000 have so far have died of the Black Death. Total deaths are going to be 30 million. Do we have some context for how many pops that is? I think he did show earlier on exactly how much pops he was starting with, kind of on the bar here, where nope. He shows us his money, but not his pops. We know what Pavia values here, right? It's just about the money. It's about the Benjamins. Which pops? What pops? Okay. Okay. We are having people die. Okay, there we go. Just kidding. He included a little bit later. We started with 1.1 million pops, and we have lost, roughly speaking, a third. And that is relatively good. Or, wait, the plague is still here. Just kidding. This is kind of the par of the course. Like 40 to 60% for a lot of starts will die. If you have someone that can really go after hospitals and is really rich, and someone who really has high population density in urban areas, you can do better. But 40 to 60 kind of seemed kind of like the normal bit. Too much time spent painting the map. Yep. You should have just pieced out and saved your people. We used some of the money that we had hoarded, plus what we took from the Teutons in place to build some hospitals. It's a little late for that. Isn't it? Isn't it? So, hospitals, you can crank them down, slap them down in urban areas specifically. So this is why having urban density is good, because the hospitals are going to apply to a location. If you have half your population in 4 locations, right, then 4 hospitals are going to save a lot of your population. If you have half your population in 2 locations, though, they're going to do even better. You know what I mean? And so density is where it's at in terms of rewarding the hospitals and also the events, or sorry, not the other building, the ones where you segregate the infected, or the other one where you could build the other building. But are we gonna get to see the hospital? We might have already seen the hospital. It gives something like between 10 and 30% disease resistance. But here we see more events, epidemic overextension, where we have enforced plague measures giving us monthly control, rebel growth, and yikes, 10% satisfaction equilibrium. And also, plus 10 towards... is that towards decentralization, or is that towards centralization? We just maintain central control. Okay, so plus 10 centralization is actually kind of nice. So this could be worth the trade-off. Yikes, that kind of hurts, though. Well, it could be worth the trade-off under the assumption that the other option's also kind of bad. And a couple years since it reached our country, we're now January 1350. No more locations in our country are affected by the Black Death, but it's taken a big toll. We can see in our country, 4.7 million. We were like 1.1. So this is kind of, maybe 45% of our pops are dead here. In this situation, a little bit less, so slightly kind of better-ish performance, probably courtesy of these hospitals doing a little bit to reduce the or increase disease resistance. If they got built in time to like actually reduce the floor in these urban areas, instead of getting 60% death, you get 45%, something like this, and now we just wait it out. Interesting that he didn't segregate the infected. Because I feel like that's kind of... Okay, well... That could have saved another 7.5% of his pops, so then he would have been like high 30% dead, instead of this 40%-ish. But we will have a lot of people dying. Notably, if you go after the religious minorities when you don't have any, that's pretty free, isn't it? And so, okay, we do see... This is kind of the... This is the normal. You just look at the pop graph and you feel sad. But yeah, a lot of people died here. The plague will ravage the world for some time to come, but it's at least over in our country, which will now have to face new challenges. And that's all for today. We will be back Friday, as we will talk about the Tinto flavor about the Mamluks. Very exciting, the Mamluks. I do think that they are kind of one of the premier starts, especially in terms of location. They are in between both the East and the West in a way that no one else really has a similar kind of start like that. And the Mamluks start off with one of the biggest population bases, and it's all crunched up right in the middle of the Nile, which is going to be really good for both building an industrial base, but also probably pretty good for resisting the Black Death, especially if they start with a lot of money. You can build a lot of these hospitals, and since all their pops are kind of scrunched up and really kind of heavily high pop areas, this means you can save a lot of them. And so this is going to be interesting. Let's see if we can find the building. I don't think that they showed it. Yeah, I think they just showed segregate the infected and then expel the sick, and they didn't show the pest house. But the pest house, I do believe, gives whatever, I don't know if it's 20 or 30%. I feel like it might be 25% or something like this. It gives more disease resistance than segregate. But if you can do a combination of pest houses and hospitals in a lot of locations, you can end up saving a big chunk of your pops. And so, but this is going to be expensive because the pest houses require money to build as well. The hospitals, I think, are much more expensive. I remember them being more expensive when we built them in Korea. But that is what we have for today. Very ubiquitous, a situation that will come around a whole bunch whenever you're playing EU5, the game with the codename Project Caesar. It's going to be... something that unless you turn it off in the game settings, which you can, it's going to be a struggle and a challenge and kind of an interesting thing. I'm pretty happy that, like, there's this huge difficulty wrench that gets thrown your way really early on that kind of, like, sets the tone for, like, things could go bad. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe. You know, do the YouTube algorithm thing. Hit the notification bell, mostly, etc. And other than that, have a happy Wednesday.